All right, all right. Is everybody alive and awake today? Come on. You can do better than that. Come on. I've been gone for 3 months. Come on. Oh, it's so good to see everybody. Hey, if you joined our church in the last 3 months, I'm your pastor. Nice to meet you. Great to have you out here. Man, it's been so great. Honestly, my wife and I, we've been watching online every single week. So thankful for our online abilities and just being able to be a part of everything that's been going on. So thankful for all of our guest speakers and pastors here at our church that have stepped in. Can we give all those guys an amazing round of applause? Man, they did such a great job while we've been gone. But before I get going, let me look in the camera and just welcome everybody who's watching online. We love you. We miss you. We can't wait till you are here in person. Come on, somebody. Let's put our hands together and welcome everybody that's at home online today. Well, cool. Well, a couple of things I just wanted to share before we get into our whole service today that we have planned for you. Number one, as you heard it in our weekly What's Up, we're moving our service next week. Everybody say next week. Next week, we're gonna be at 10 a.m. And the reason why we're doing that, there are a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons that we're doing that is because for a lot of our workers and people that are serving today, like in the kids ministry and different other places along the church parking lot, you know, they really kind of miss church today. They're in there serving, which we love that. Can we give them just another round of applause? I don't know if they'll hear us, but we love them. They're loving on your babies right now and your kids. But they're not gonna really have church today. And so what we do before a service, before we start this whole thing, is that we'll have an opportunity to have a little service for our team, that we can kind of just have some worship and a short little message for them so that they can be encouraged. And even though they're serving at church today, they still get an opportunity to hear God's word and to get a little worship in them and going on. And so we're gonna do that. Plus, you know, our goal is to move to 10 a.m., you help grow it a little bit more, and then hopefully by Christmas and early next year, we'll go back to 2 services like we used to a long time ago, and really just begin to continue to grow the church, see more people coming to this place. Because how many of you guys know that God is not done reaching people, and that he needs churches that care about people that are far from him and don't know him yet? And so we're gonna continue to grow as a church, and I'm just excited because I just feel like as we're back, and like I said, I feel like this is a new beginning for us and for the church in a lot of ways, and we're just excited to just continue to grow and to reach people in our community and see what God does as we move forward into our destiny. And I know that someday there's a building out there with our name on it. Come on, somebody, and we're gonna have that, and so we're saving like crazy for that, and we're excited for that day whenever it comes. Please, you can be praying for that. If you pray for, have a prayer list or anything, pray that our church finds a building because it's great to be portable. Actually, it's not great to be portable, but it's we're ready for a building. Come on, somebody, and we're praying and believing God for that. Just so you know, we're praying. We'd love to be in Rochester Hills. That's where we started, and that's where God, I believe, given us supernatural, just a heart for that city. And not that your city that you live in is any worse, but that's just, we feel like God's planted us there. And we're in Auburn Hills right now, so we got the hills right, but we still gotta, get the other part right. But it's all good. God loves every city, and so wherever he plants us, but we just feel a heart for Rochester Hills, but you can be praying for that as well. A couple other things just want to share with you. As I'm back, the doctors are still like, hey, still try to avoid, like hugging and kissing on people and like, jumping in people's arms. Like, just try to be a little bit distance if you can. You just had a transplant, you're on immune suppression medicines, like be careful. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll be careful. But so I just wanted to say, hey, I may not be hanging around like I used to as much. I may not be, hugging and kissing on you like I used to. If I was kissing on you, I'm sorry, I apologize about that. But so just so you know, I'm gonna still have a little bit of distance. It's not you, it's me, okay? And so I'm gonna be a little bit, but just for a little bit, just so the doctors feel a little bit more comfortable with everything going on. And then the second thing, or the third thing I wanna let you know is that, as I'm back, it's funny how I stand up here and preach, but this is actually, it takes a lot out of you when you do this. And so I want to build my strength up in a strong and wise way. And so we're still going to be having guest speakers and our pastors who are on staff here speaking from time to time, sharing the preaching load as my strength comes back to normal and gets better. So I will be up here speaking, but there'll still be other people speaking and sharing the load as we go forward, just because I want to be wise in that. And I don't want to be a pastor who has to do it all. God has given us a great group of people, and I believe in sharing the load. And actually, the Bible talks about that my job is to train up everybody, you as well, to do the work of the ministry. Like, my job is to train up others to do the work of ministry. I had a pastor friend who said he would look at his pastors and say, if I catch you doing ministry, I'll fire you, because your job is to train up other people to do the ministry. So don't let me catch you doing ministry. And I was like, you really tell him that? He's like, yep. And I'm like, okay, wow, that's amazing. So anyway, so our goal is to continue to train up and raise up people right here. Some of you never even thought about coming up on this stage and sharing something that God has for you, but that's our goal as a church, to continue to find the gifts inside of you and help you develop those things and be the person that, God is calling you to be. And so I'm excited about that. But we're actually, starting a series, a brand new series. I know the summer at City Light was a 3-month series. That's our longest series ever. I'm sure a lot of you are just, love that intro video, and we're ready to retire that intro video forever. And the umbrellas and beach balls, you're like, okay, can we move on? But, I'm excited. We're starting a new series in here called Life on Mission. And that whole phrase right there is huge for me, and I hope it will be huge for you. And what I mean by that is that, in our life, we may have a job. You may have, you may work somewhere. You may, be a stay-at-home mom. You may be whatever you do. But at the same time, just because we have this one responsibility or multiple responsibilities doesn't mean that we're not on mission for God in the midst of every other responsibility that we have. Like God has a call for you on your life, and at the same time, as we go forward in life, that call doesn't just stop because we're at work that day. Our call doesn't stop because, you may be going through a hard time in your life. That call doesn't stop just because, I don't have time for it right now. That when you live life on mission, that whatever you're doing, wherever you are, whoever's in front of you, that you are on mission for God. And you know that I'm not gonna necessarily beat him up with the Bible. That's not what I'm talking about. But saying I'm gonna live my life in such a way that I know that he is putting me in front of somebody strategically. I'm here in this situation, and God, what do you want to do right now? And I'm living my life with a perspective that, God, you may want to use me in this situation. I didn't expect it, but in a way that I could change somebody's life for the kingdom of God. I can't tell you how many times that when I was in the hospital after my surgery, and by the way, I left the hospital after 6 days, which was pretty remarkable. The doctors were like, we'll send you home. Okay, you look good. It was pretty remarkable. But I can't tell you how many times in that process that God put me in front of somebody, a nurse, a hospital staff person, that I could just share Jesus with them. And I could just share, what God had been doing in my life. And I loved it because a lot of the times, I just asked people what their story was. Hey, what's your story? Share with me. And it was amazing that when I took the time to shut up and listen to other people's story, it was amazing what they would share with me. And it was amazing the depth they got. And it was amazing that through that whole situation, I'm here, I got a huge scar. I got tubes coming out of me. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, how can I be a blessing in this person's life? How can God use me right now as I'm laid up, feeling like garbage? Well, I was on drugs. I felt a little good, let's be honest. But it's like, how can God use me in this situation? I can't tell you how many people I prayed for in the hospital. I can't tell you how many people that, or maybe people that a lot of us would never even talk to. That I took the time and just said, God, I'm in this situation right now. How can you use me to make a difference? And that's what Life on Mission is truly all about. For those of you who maybe have been coming recently and don't know my story, about 2 years ago, living life, having a great time. Just got back from Disney World with our family. Just life was great. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, life changed. I started to get a nice little belly. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, man, I don't understand. I don't have that belly no more, if you can tell. Looking good. Come on, somebody. But I was like, what's going on? I went to a doctor, and they started to do some evaluation. And, within a few days, they said, hey, you're hearing liver failure. And I'm like, what? You gotta be wrong. You're weird. No, that's not it. And they're like, yeah, let's do an ultrasound just to confirm everything and MRIs. And sure enough, I had, liver failure, cirrhosis. And they were like, listen, things are gonna get worse. You're gonna eventually need a transplant. And, here you are. And talk about living life, having a great time, and then just being kicked in the face by life. That's how it felt. Everything changed in that moment for my family and I. Everything was different. It was like, oh my gosh, what do we got to do now? And after procedure after procedure, doctor visit after doctor visit. I mean, we even got to a point when one of the doctors here in Michigan said, you're kind of at risk. I don't think we would do a transplant with you. I mean, talk about that news. Like, wait, I need a new liver to live, right? Yeah. And you won't give me one? No, sorry. Okay. Like, talk about that kind of a moment in your life where you feel like there's no hope. Yeah, but, with God, all things are possible. Come on. So we did some research, did some calls, and a lot of we went down to the Cleveland Clinic because they're one of the best in the nation when it comes to liver. And we got down there, and I kind of went down there thinking, are you just going to help sustain my life, quality of life? And they said, no. We can do a liver transplant with you. It's no big deal. We do this all the time. It's all good. We'll get you hooked up. It's great. And it was amazing to me. But even in the process of getting a blessing, there was still a lot of stuff I had to walk through. There were days and Sundays I'd come up here barely having the energy and the strength to stand up here. But because of God and his faithfulness, it was like whenever I touched my foot on those stairs and got up on the stage, it was like supernatural strength was always there, giving me the ability to preach God's word and to share God's love with people. And I knew that God had a plan for my life. God was enabling me to do this. And so as we get through everything, one of the greatest things that came to me was they said, hey, we have this program called a living donor program. And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, well, basically you find somebody and you trick them to give them half your liver. I said, well, I can do that. That's great. And they said that, the liver is an amazing organ. It regenerates. And we literally can take half of somebody's organ and put it inside of you. And then within a few months, it grows back to a healthy liver. And it's actually safer. It has better longevity, like all these positives with it. And I'm like, well, let's do that. And I'm like, how am I, I don't know if you know me that well, but like, I hate asking people for stuff for me. Like, you ask me for something, I'll be there, I'll do that. But it's like when you ask for yourself, sometimes it's hard to do. So we made a video, we threw it out there on Facebook and social media, whatever, and people started to call in and say, yeah, they raised their hand, I'll do that. I'll step up to the plate. If I'm a match, I'll do it. It was amazing. Like, I think we had like 40 people sign up to do this. It was so humbling. And I'm just like, God, you're so amazing that people would take the time to do this. And it just blew me away. And it was great because they picked somebody and he was a perfect match. And meeting with him and talking with him, it just blew me away that life on mission was something that this person completely just lived out in their life. And hearing his story and hearing why he did this and all this stuff, it blew me away. And so I said, you know what, my first Sunday back, I wanna make sure and bring this individual up on stage and let's share the story of what God did. And so could you do me a favor? Come on, you can stand to your feet if you will. I wanna introduce my living donor, Tim Frantz, come on, somebody. Love you so much, man. Awesome. Well, cool. We're gonna do something a little bit different today. Thank you, sir. We're just gonna take a minute. Yeah, you keep clapping. It's okay. We look like brothers. I guess he's way better looking though. But I wanted to really share the story with you guys, because it's not every day that obviously somebody steps up to the plate and says, "Here, you can have half my organ," And so Tim, man, I'm just so thankful that you're here joining us. I love you, man. And it's a liver reunion right now, and it's just great. And I think
I have 2 livers now.
I know, man. It's just crazy. Like, it's just he's got his and he's got mine.
That too.
So,
technically, it's mine.
Yeah, technically. He calls me and is like, "How's my liver doing?" It's mine. You know that, right? Don't eat pizza. Chicken and rice.
Chicken, rice, asparagus.
Asparagus. There it is. And so, Tim, I think for a lot of people, I think the big question is, why in the world did you do this? Why in the world did you step up to the plate and do this?
Oh, man. It's very, it's a very simple answer, but, I'll give some detail. When I saw the video, probably just like each and every one of you that saw that video in February, you're just like, what can I do? Here's my kidney, here's my liver, here's whatever you may need. And so I watched the video downstairs in our kitchen, and I felt the presence of God like I've never felt before. Well, in a long time. So I go back upstairs, so we have 2 young kids. So I had to go get some quiet time and go upstairs in our bedroom and rewatch it. And as I'm upstairs watching it again, I felt the Lord say, "You're the one. You're the donor." So I knew in February that I was going to be your donor. I knew there's going to be tons of people calling in, but it was a very surreal moment. Like, no joke, the Lord literally said, "You're the one." So he was preparing me and my wife since February that we were going to be the ones to go through this process. And I watched the video. I come downstairs, and, I shed a few tears, probably a few more than that. And I come downstairs, and, your wife knows when you maybe have cried or you've had this moment, and she's just like, "Okay, let's do it." And so from that moment, we just made the call. And I felt bad for everybody calling, because I literally knew that, when I would see people on Facebook posting like, "Can't wait till you find this liver," and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and I knew it was one of the most like weird feelings that, I literally heard from the Lord and said, "You're giving this man your liver." I was like, okay, we're all in.
I love it. And you told me your wife, what did your wife say when she watched the video and she looked at you? Do you remember what you told me?
Oh, gosh. I mean, she pretty much said, "You're doing it."
Yeah.
Like,
I love it. His wife said,
yeah,
"You're doing this, right?"
Yeah, that was literally, "You're doing this, right?" And then quite like, 2 seconds of hesitation. I'm like, "Yes."
Come on. Thank God for some wives in this place. Come on. Like, you're doing this. You ain't getting out of it. Get up there.
Yeah.
So, I love it, man. And obviously, my wife and I, my kids, this church, my family, we're so thankful and grateful for you saying yes to God. Because I think a lot of times when people talk about being obedient to God and saying yes to God, I think sometimes we may think immediately, God, if I'm living my life for you and going all in, man, I'm afraid what you're gonna call me to do. Like, I think sometimes it's like, God, if I go all in with you, are you gonna call me to be a missionary in Africa? Like, I don't know if I wanna do that. So do I really wanna go all in? But it's, so you're giving your liver, an organ to somebody, that's a big yes. Was it that big of a yes though for you?
I started Break Loose Prison Ministry in 2012. And until that moment, that was the biggest yes that I've ever given in my life, because that was the moment where I said yes. I said, "God, no matter what, I want to be all in. And, I went from having security, I went from having a good job, all this stuff, and I was kind of a full-time missionary in prison, right? I mean, I would get out after 3 hours every time I went in. But, it was like, that was one of the biggest yeses of my life, was forsaking everything that I had built up to in that moment and just saying, yes, we're gonna do this. But as far as the liver, I mean, the Lord made it so simple for me. Yes, it's a big yes, because, I did have moments where when you go to Cleveland and they do this testing on you and they do the CT scans, MRIs, all that, you spend a day and a half, they tell you there's a chance that nothing's going to happen, and then there's a chance you're going to die. Like, they literally tell you that nothing's going to happen, or you could die in the procedure. So, you have these moments of, well, I don't want to have my wife be a widow with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So there were moments where internally you're just like, okay, God, like, is this really, am I giving this man my liver? And, it wasn't even like a process where I had to think for like 10 seconds. Immediately it was like, okay, yeah, I'm giving this guy my liver, And so really the yes as far as the liver was so simple, because we had such confirmation. And when you just surrender your life to the lordship of Christ and you just surrender all, there's really no such thing as radical obedience. It's just being obedient to what God's called you to be. There's no difference between, well, sometimes people are like, oh, you're so radical. I mean, you're literally just saying, you know what, God said that, he said to just be obedient to him and do what he's called you to do. And, I always go to that verse, no greater love than to lay down your life for someone else, right? For a friend. And in that moment, it's just, I'm not dying a martyr or anything like that, right? I mean, if one day I die a martyr and it's something cool, awesome. But in that moment, it's just, what would Jesus do, right? You remember those wristbands that people used to wear nonstop? Some people still do if you still have those. But it's just being obedient to God. And just, once you say yes and giving him your life, my life is no longer my own to begin with. My life ended in 2009, and then I got a new life. If he wants me to give a kidney or whatever, like, so be it. Like, we die when we give our life to the Lord. My life's no longer my own. My kidneys, my organs, my bone, like, nothing's your own anymore. Once you surrender to the lordship of Christ. So it was very easy.
Absolutely. I know one of my favorite verses that helped me just throughout my life is found in Galatians 2:20. I think they have it on the screen, but it basically says this, where I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Like that has been like the mantra of my life. And I think, though, a lot of times when we talk about being obedient to God, it may not start with this huge ask of God. It may not start with like give an organ to somebody, right? It may just be like, hey, go home and love your kids. Go home and pray over your kids before you tuck them in at night. It may be, hey, love your spouse. Like, be present with your family when you're at home. It may be, hey, when you're at work, work with integrity. Be a person of character and honor. Like, it may be something that's so basic, but as you begin to say yes, God, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna follow you here. It's like the yeses, and then you see the faithfulness. Yes, God, you see God's faithfulness. Yes, God, I see his faithfulness. And then when you get to something that God is asking you to do that may be bigger than you could ever imagine, it's like I've already heard God's voice before. I know it, and it's like, he's been faithful with all these other yeses. Why would I think he would not be faithful with this big yes? Yeah. And I just, again, want to encourage people today that, listen, being obedient to God and just trusting him, it doesn't have to be this like huge thing that just it scares you to death. It can be something where you just say, okay, God, what do you want me to do today? What do you put in on my heart today? And I'm gonna do that because I know you're faithful. I can trust you. You're not gonna lead me to a place that's gonna be dangerous where it's like, oh my God. It's like, okay, God, I'm following you every single day. I trust you. If you led me to this, I know, God, that Everything's gonna be great. I always think about that story in the New Testament when Jesus tells his disciples, hey, get in the boat and we're gonna go to the other side of the lake. And then Jesus is like, I'll meet you there, by the way. You know, or no, this is the one, he's in the boat, sorry. And they're in the boat and Jesus falls asleep, right? And they're scared, the disciples are freaking out. They're like, we're gonna die. And Jesus is sleeping, but they forget that Jesus told them, we're gonna get to the other side. We're going to the other side. Like, this isn't gonna end here. And he obviously stands up, rebukes the winds and the waves and says, hey, you know, peace be still. And he's like, what's wrong with you guys? Don't you have any faith? And it's this great story, but it reminds me that when God speaks to you about something in your life, that you can trust him, that what he says is gonna happen. If he says, hey, you know, have no fear in this situation, that you can say, okay, God, my flesh may have some fear, but I can trust you to know that we're gonna get to the other side. If you're leading me in this direction, I can have faith and trust and know that, God, you're with me. And if you're with me, I can get through anything. And that was huge for me in the situation. I know it was huge for you in this whole situation as well. Tim, has there been any cool stories that since you know, hey, I gave half my liver away to somebody, like, has there been any cool stories that you've been able to share Christ with people along the way or since this whole situation?
Yeah, it seems like the one thing that I did ask Jason at the beginning was don't tell anybody until like the very end. Because even like being up here is just like, it's kind of a lot for me, you know, because it's like.
Yeah, I gotta say, this guy, I love him so much. He does not want recognition. He doesn't want like applause. And so that's why I want everybody to stand up and applaud him when he came up here.
No, but you know, and then once people do find out like, oh my gosh, you're giving someone, you know, it was actually 68% of my liver.
Yeah,
so
68.
It wasn't 50%,
so,
just so everyone's clear.
Sorry. I don't know if they told you that beforehand.
And he did lock me in his basement for a long time until I gave him the liver.
Yeah. He might have been on drugs before we got to Cleveland.
No, but it's just been such a surreal time where I'm meeting people and seeing people at stores where they're like, hey, you're the guy. You know, like I was at Pastor Russo's 40th anniversary thing or whatever it was last weekend, and I had like 50 people come up to me talking about this liver and talking about, you know, what happened. And for me, I'm just like, yeah, I gave him my liver, cool, all right, let's move on. But there was one time I was at a Target in Auburn Hills, and I don't know if it was one of your people, and I don't even know if I shared this with my wife. I probably didn't because I get so sidetracked all the time. But I was in Target and someone came up to me and it's like, hey, that was a remarkable thing that you did, giving Pastor Jason your liver, half of your liver. And so I just got to spend time, about 20 minutes with this person in the shampoo conditioner aisle. You know, I'm just like, look at, you know, just people all around us. You know, it was at the Auburn Hills Target, and you know, we're just talking. Got to pray with them, got to encourage them because they felt like God was calling them to do something great. And it was pretty much just like what you just said. It's the little. It's not always the big giant things. It's just the little things. Just be obedient. You know, one step after another. So there's been so many of those stories of people just, I mean, it still happens, you know, like, hey, you're the liver guy. Like, yeah, I'm the liver guy. But, you know, that one stuck out the most because it was such a touching moment for me as well. And this person that just got to spend 20 minutes with someone that I had never met before, but through being a part of your miracle, you know, and that's what my wife and I, you know, were so pumped. We got to be a part of the miracle. You know, it wasn't that we performed it. It wasn't that, you know, yes, I had a great liver, you know, but we got to be
the best.
I mean, it's already like 100%, isn't it?
It's like 120%.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we got to be a part of the miracle of Pastor Jason recovering. And it doesn't stop now that he's here, September 12th, and, you know, he's back. The story still goes on. You know, the story is still what God did and the faithfulness of God. And so it doesn't stop just because we're here at this moment. You know, there's still going to be testimonies of God's faithfulness through this. People are still going to be coming to the Lord through this story. All the lies. I mean, literally, the day that you were on drugs in the hospital, he was texting me like, hey, I just got to share about Jesus, And it's just such a powerful time that we just get to celebrate every day what God did. And 10 years from now, we're still going to believe that people are going to come to know Jesus and come through this story and through what he did, through this surgery. And so, my wife and I, we're just so honored that, when these stories do happen, when people do approach you, you get to share just on the simplicity of the gospel and the simplicity of Jesus just wants us to be obedient. When you accept Christ, just say yes. That's like a mantra of me, especially with ministry, is I say yes to almost everything and then I figure it out. It's like if God calls you to do something, just say yes. Especially when God calls you to, you don't even have to figure it out. Like he helps you through the times. But so yeah, there's that one, and there's so many of them.
I love it, man. Well, I want to hit your ministry a little bit, talk about it, because saying yes to going into prisons, sharing the gospel with inmates. Some people may have a mindset of, man, these guys, deserve to be in there. They've done some really bad things, and then you're going to go in there and share Jesus with them. Like why inmates? Let's talk about that for a second.
It's a really simple answer. If you turn to your Bible, you can go to John 3:16, and that'll answer that question. It's literally what I point everybody to. And, we get that question all the time. Why inmates? Why prisoners? Why the person who committed the most heinous crime? Or why the person who committed tax fraud? Well, it's because Jesus, in John 3:16, it says, for God so loved the world. And in that word world, I think prisons are in that word. And so whether they're in prison or whether they're homeless, no matter where they are, that word world means everybody. So we get to be a part of what God's doing in the prison. It's really a simple answer. It says, there's really, not only did he say visit the prisoner, right? But then he also said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And so guess what? That was for the murderer. Yeah. That was for the adulterer. That was for the person who committed the most heinous crime. That person still has an opportunity to encounter the love of Christ. It's not our job, right, to ask, oh, what'd you do? Like, we never ask that question because that's a terrible question to ask. But what we do get to say is, hey, Jesus loves you and that he died for you. So we were in prison yesterday. Now, we were probably about 150 inmates we got to share the gospel to. Not one time did we ever ask, what'd you do? A guy would say, hey, yeah, I've been in it 34 years. You kind of do the math and you kind of know what crime, okay, well, I know what this guy's in here for. But you still get to say, you know what? Jesus died for you. And, he gave his life so that you could have a fresh start. So that's why.
I love it, man. It's so good. Talk about a little bit of your ministry, like how long you've been doing it and what kind of, how many people have you seen come to the Lord through it all? And even share, what do you guys do? I love the approach you guys have with prison ministry.
Yeah, so we started it in June of 2012. That was the biggest yes of my life. I think that's what made the liver process even easier because, like I said, in 2012, we started the ministry, and October 22nd was my last day of working, the job that I was currently at. And, I started, I'll just be honest, my salary and everything decreased by 500% once I started ministry, it was one of those times where
join the club.
You're eating hot and readies and hot dogs for every meal, just making it work. But we started in 2012. We always thought that we would be doing crusades in prison yards. Hey, let's be like Billy Graham and go to prisons and do these big crusades. And, it's let's just do it. And then, we started and we're like, nothing's happening. So one day I'm at a church, helping another prison ministry, just being faithful. I said yes, and I was just being obedient to what God told me to do, was serving under another prison ministry. So I met this lady who was a chaplain, at a Lapeer Correctional, Thumb Correctional in Lapeer. She said, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, well, I'm playing church league softball. And she says, you should bring your team to my prison. So I'm like, okay, I've never heard about bringing softball teams to prison. So we did that, and ever since that moment, we've had 107 prisons say yes to us. And it was just from that random occurrence of being in a church in Lansing, helping another guy stack books. But our approach to ministry is very simple. We just ask the prison, what do you need? And we fulfill that need. Whether it's, we've played chess and checkers inside of a South Carolina prison before because it was raining and that's what they needed. And so, the goal obviously is to reach the lost in the prison. And we've been able to share the gospel with over 50,000 inmates in just over 8.5 years.
Awesome.
And it's been so surreal, that we've got to share in over 100 prisons. We got to share the gospel with over 50,000 inmates. Over 20,000 of those have said yes to the Lord.
Come on,
and it's
that's
just
amazing.
been like, we would go just for one. We would go for one. So it's just our approach is just like the approach was for the liver. My life's very simple. Is we just say yes. If we ask the prison, what do you need? And we just try to fulfill that need. But with the biggest goal being, we want to reach the lost inside these prisons and we want to disciple them. Those are the two key components. So awesome. And whether it's a chapel service, worship service, Bible study, we've done a Dave Ramsey course in there. No matter what it is, we have the end goal. We always tell them, well, we have to share Jesus. We'll do a 10-week Dave Ramsey course or whatever it may be, but as long as at the end that we can share Jesus, that's the most important part.
That's so awesome, Tim. I love what you do. And just so you guys know, since I think the beginning of our church, we have financially as a church supported his ministry. And so you may not say, I don't think I could ever go to prison, but you've already been there.
Yeah.
With your donation, your giving, your tithes and offerings. Like we've been a part of what God's been doing with him for 6-7 years. And that's so amazing that we've been able to do that. And what's really cool is that Tim's got a little table in the back in our lobby area. And if you're interested about prison ministry or you want to support him on your own personally, stop by the back table. We'd love you to connect with him, give him a big hug too, and applaud him because he loves that. And you guys can just connect with him and connect with what they're doing because I think it's so awesome. It's crazy how fast time goes. But Tim, as we're kind of wrapping things up, what would you say to people today about everything that we've been talking about and trusting the Lord that yes, saying yes to him?
Before I answer that, I just want to say that I want to reiterate what you just said. Every time yesterday when we were in prison and we got to speak to those 150 people, City Light was right there. You guys have been so faithful to us as a body and as a church body. All those 50,000 inmates, that has been because of your generosity. And obviously the generosity of others, but you guys, every prison, every inmate that gets touched, every decision that's made, every person that gets discipled, you guys are right there with us. You don't have to physically be in there, but just know when we're in there, you're in there. Obviously, we would love to have you in prison. I mean, I
love that.
It can
we want you in prison.
We want you in prison.
Especially you.
And if you're over the age of 18, come to prison. But, as far as saying yes, there were times I ran away from prison ministry. I ran for the first maybe year. I did not want to do it. I kept, I'll try to be real short. I'm long-winded. When God told me to do prison ministry, 2 other people came up to me and said, I feel like you're supposed to do prison ministry. Have you ever thought about it? And I told them no. Because it was just, I didn't want to do it. It was such an inconvenience to my life. I wanted to be a cop. I was going to school to be a cop. I wanted to put them inside the prison, but instead cops give me job security now. But, I ran. And then one more time, I had this, and they were all little old ladies, so I don't want to, but they were
Thank
just.
God for some little old ladies, come on.
Why I said that is because those ladies who just pray for you, and they just pray, and they're just like, they might be retired, they're all 3 of them retired, they just live at home, and they just pray for you, they pray for your church, they pray, and this third one comes up, and it's like, you're supposed to do prison ministry, don't run. And from that moment, it's just like, yes, because I didn't want to say. I said yes, then I said no, then I said no and said yes. But just know on the other side of your yes, as we know, there's lives. There's lives that will be transformed. You may not be going to prison. You may not be giving a liver. You may not be going overseas. But your yes helps other people impact lives. When you're obedient and you're helping, the widow, the orphan, the person who just is down on their luck, your yes has so much power. And through your obedience, lives are truly changed. You know, I know sometimes, you know, it might be in the natural, it might be hard to sow a seed. It might be hard to do these things. You know, even for my wife and I, sometimes it's like, you know, let's go, you know, let's be obedient, let's do these things. And it's just, but on the other side of your yes, there's lives being changed right now, you know. And so just say yes. You don't have to figure anything out. God helps you with all that stuff. I didn't figure prison ministry out. There was no blueprint for me. We just said yes to everything. Now we still say yes to everything. We just do it, you know, because at the end of your yes, at the end of your obedience, is lives that are going to be changed. There's going to be families reconciled back to each other. There's going to be lives restored. There's going to be drug addicts set free, you know, just like that song said. So please say yes. You know, when God's calling you to it, just say yes.
So good. We can have everybody stand.